share that this is the first big conclave which has completely gone virtual thanks to the pandemic, which has allowed us to be the host of this national level event where we have tried our best to give you the flawless virtual experience. Now, please allow me to introduce Professor Amitabha Bandyopadhyay, who is the professor in charge at SIIC IIT Kanpur, who is also the backbone of this organization. I would request Professor Amitabha to give the opening address for the ceremony. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amita. Um, on behalf of Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and the Foundation for Innovation and Research in Science and Technology, I welcome our distinguished guests on the podium, Dr. Renu Swarup, Dr. R.A. Mashelkar, Sri Jayant Sinha, Dr. Manish Diwan, Dr. Nikhil Agarwal, and Dr. Saurabh Srivastav to this event. I also welcome my colleagues from all the big partners and associate partner organizations, the heroes of this event, the amazing young entrepreneurs and the big grantees, and all other attendees. Welcome to the 6th edition of Big Conclave being organized by Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur and BIRAC jointly on a completely virtual platform which is entirely made in India floor. I am particularly proud that we are hosting this on a completely made in India platform. Let me say it outright that today I am very proud. Because Dr. Mashelkar is here, it is pertinent that I dial back to 1946-47. Just when India got its independence, the entire machinery was put in motion to conduct its first election. That was slated to be in 1952. And one of the key ingredients for an election to be conducted was availability of indelible ink. In those days, indelible ink was not made in India. The only option that we had was to borrow the indelible ink from our previous colonial masters, the British, which was not acceptable to many. So National Physics Laboratory and young chemists in there, they rose to the occasion and produced our first indelible ink within a record 1.5 years, which was eventually transferred on to the Mysore-based company, and now we know that this is the same indelible ink that is used in every election, and it is also exported to many countries around the world. So if there is an example of Indian R&D ecosystem rising to the occasion, that comes in my mind as the foremost example. Now, if we think about this crisis, the pandemic that is bothering the entire world, the COVID-19 pandemic, we all have followed the newspapers in mid-March, early March, that we did not have our PPE kits, we did not have N95 grade masks or any other kind of masks, we did not have diagnostic kits, we did not have ventilators, HFNC machines, you name it. We were grossly underprepared. By the middle of June, we started exporting PPE kits. We were self-sufficient in masks. We started our diagnosis not only I had a discussion with Dr. Renu Swarup, and I learned that we are already doing more than 5 lakh tests a day, and we are capable of doing 5 times more. And not only that, even the ingredients of the test kits are being made in India. In comparison, there are some of the developed nations which is not able to keep up with the pace, and there is a huge backlog. And the brightest and best part is that most of these efforts it did not come from the established businesses, the corporate houses. Rather, it came from the startup ecosystem. Whether it is MyLab or whether it is Noka Robotics or eSpin Nanotechnology, these are the organizations, young entrepreneurs, nimble-footed, easy to pivot. They rose to the occasion and delivered for the country. And I am extremely proud of them. But we need to think that how was it possible that the Indian science and technology R&D ecosystem, which is, by way of little bit of self-criticism, which is not known to respond to societal needs in such a big way, how did it happen overnight within 3 months? The ground was prepared. The ecosystem that was created in last 10 years actually helped, and helped in a big way. And there is absolutely no denial that the genre of companies that delivered during this crisis are mostly the bio companies, and no one can deny that the role the BIDAC played in this entire crisis is exemplary. It is the ecosystem that was created since 2012 that paid massive dividend during this hour of crisis, and we are all thankful to the vision of those who made BIDAC possible and the successful operation of it. I'm sure Dr. Diwan will talk about it. So yes, the pandemic has caused a lot of damage, but within this gloom, I don't see doom. Rather, I see a boom and a blossoming of an Atmanirbhar Bharat, and BIDAC for sure will be one of the main forces to make this happen. With this, I now request my friend and colleague, Dr. Manish Diwan, the head strategic partnership and entrepreneurship development at BIDAC, to talk more about BIDAC ecosystem and the big community. Dr. Diwan, please.
Thank you, Amitabh. It's a very pleasant morning, and I welcome everybody for the 6th BIG conclave. Happy to have IIT Kanpur as the lead partner to take us through. I will give a gist of what's the biotech ecosystem looks like in the country and how the big community is evolving with the few slides, if I may. Deck. Yeah, can you confirm if you are able to see the slide deck? Amitabh or somebody, can you confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right,
but
great.
It needs to go full screen.
This is full screen on my side. Can you see it as a full screen or not?
We can see as your window.
All right.
I think the you can start. Other will figure it out meanwhile.
All right. Maybe the technical team can make it full screen. Yeah. Thank you very much. BIDAC, as a not-for-profit organization, Government of India enterprise under Department of Biotechnology, supports entrepreneurs, startups, medium-scale companies as well as large-scale companies. So across the value chain, and it's been doing it for the biotech sector that involves healthcare, life sciences, wellness, industrial biotechnology, agri-tech, waste management, sanitation, and clean energy. There is a end-to-end facilitation that we have created to scale innovation from lab, from ideation to all the way to market. And there are various schemes and programs that have been created which are customized depending upon the stage of the startup, entrepreneur, or the company which is at. So BIG is one of the schemes which is at the proof of concept level that facilitates idea for translation into proof of concept. BIG provides a funding support of 50 lakh rupees for an 18 months period, and in excess to all that would be required to an individual or a startup, from equipment, consumable, manpower, incubation support, travel, outsourcing, to build a minimal viable prototype. So far, we have supported 550 such entrepreneurs and startups, and out of that, there are 175 patents that have been filed so far. There are 75 such grantees, such startups which have received follow-on funding beyond BIG from partner funding, angels, VCs, and others. We have this is a sixth networking conclave, as we just heard. There are, most importantly, there are now 50 products which have converted from an humble idea to begin with all the way to products now. And I just give a snapshot for some of these products which have gone in. They have come in from all diverse forums, like from healthcare, agri-tech, industrial biotechnology, deep tech, soft tech, innovations which are unique for India, customized to reach to last mile also. And many of you who would be attending today's big conclave can be proud of seeing your products getting into market. Some of the BIG grantees who begin with the BIG have made a higher mark with recognition not only in the country but as well as at the global front. Some of these names are being flashed here. BIG aspirants have spread out across nation. I think that is one of the biggest achievement of BIG. It has been able to inculcate a culture of entrepreneurship that has reached not only to tier 1 cities, tier 2, tier 3 inclusive. The individuals and startups, you can see the large number of individuals who gain BIG as an award and then convert into a startup and instrumentalize it further. There is a growing proportion of women entrepreneurs who are being benefited through BIG. And this is one of the glimpses of such women entrepreneurs that have been recognized. And these numbers are growing. Some of you would be sitting here in the audience as well today, and some we will hear during the day. So we have begun from an humble initiation in 2012 with reaching to 100 BIG entrepreneurs by 2015. Dr. Mishelkar, you would be happy to know that we have pole vaulted, and in 2019 we have increased to 2,500 plus BIG grantees, increased the strength of BIG partners to 8, and now we have 11 associate BIG partners as well. This all could not have been possible by passionate support and carry forward by our BIG partners, IKP, CCAMP, Venture Center, KIT, FIT, SICC, of course, SIGN, NAM, AIDEA NAM, and 11 associate partners now. They will take it even further to tier 2, tier 3 cities. So if you look at the biotech innovation system here, we are looking at a spread of incubation network of BIRAC all across the country. In some pockets are still remaining, but this 50 incubator network, which has created 7 geographical soft clusters. We have 5 technology transfer offices now through National Biopharma Mission supported, BIRAC's regional centers, which are spread out across the country, equity funding schemes, seed fund partners, leap fund partners, as well as Sparsh centers. Now, if you look at distribution of startups across the country, we see a density which is almost mimicking or mirroring the presence of BioNest incubator network in the country. if you look at from 2017, we had about 1,700 biotech startups in the country. In 2019, we see almost like two and a half fold increase in the numbers all across this sector. Going forward in next 4 years, we expect our biotech startup numbers in the country would increase to about 10,000. In order to cater to that requirement, what we do, we bring in entrepreneurship development through pre-incubation centers, incubation centers, international programs like Ignite, and association with other stakeholders like TIDE. So these are national and international efforts that go into being to create such entrepreneurship network. There is high-end skill development effort, which includes technical, evangelization, regulatory workshops, IP clinics, and challenges and hackathons, which see a large number of participants to come together. We also bring a power of strength of collaboration, the strategic partnership, which includes government, public, private, national, international, industry, investor, all put together. So that strength is made available to individual startup as well as incubators also. And you could see that there is a sufficient conscious effort to bring in international exposure to our startup ecosystem in order to build the expertise as well as competency, which is of global level. If we can send our startup incubators to outside India, we can also bring outside India ecosystem to India. Global Bio India was one example where we had participation from across the ecosystems outside India, as well as it showcased the strength of India's ecosystem to the world. We hope to have the second version of Global Bio India soon. A dedicated platform that we have created, which shows startups which have commercialized their technologies. And there are 150 such technologies, and this dedicated e-portal is a place where anybody can visit and see what the biotech ecosystem has reached to this level. I think this startup culture has created a knowledge cluster linking academia research and has evolved as an innovation centerpiece. And with the right mentoring, right facilitation for production and commercialization through technology clusters, we will see these innovation clusters go and grow from here. This is the technology clusters that I'm talking about that can propel startups from POC to pilot and from pilot to manufacturing. Looking at startups to move towards SMEs and building large companies in the future. We have a structured program for funding, right from fellowship through pre-incubation support to all the way up to 7 crore per startup. We recently added Fund of Fund ACE as well as a biotech angel network. That is an additional emphasis on the mobilization of private equity into the sector. As Amitabh was just talking about, startup ecosystem, we should all be proud of. We have been able to steer together this ecosystem, and through few initiatives from BIREC, we've been able to fund more than 150 such solutions in a very short span of time by collective effort of BIREC, DBT, NBM put together. 200 plus startups were received regulatory support, and about 100 plus the network support. And this is the power of our network that I was talking to. 125 solutions have already reached to market for COVID through the extended network of BioNest Incubator and this ecosystem. And I am proud that our bioincubators also reflected positively by sharing or waiving off rentals for the incubators in these difficult times. And they have created platforms to connect with everybody. And a large population was inspired and supported through these joint efforts. So I think going forward, BIRAC will continue to put in an effort connecting startups, entrepreneurs, academic institutions, product commercialization, IP, all that strength that is required, capacity building through incubation network. And we should look at and aspire to reach to a bioeconomy which is now a set target of 150 billion by 2025, making India as the innovation hub for the globe for the biotech sector. And we would also be looking at facilitation of creation of manufacturing hub for the biotechnology in the country, as our Honorable Prime Minister has inspired us to create a 100 billion biomanufacturing hub by 24-25. With this, I will stop here and over to you, Dr. Next level. Thank you. Probably you are on mute, Dr. Amitabh.
Yeah, sorry, Manish. So thank you, Manish, for a very nice account of BIRAC and BIG's accomplishments. It is indeed something to be proud of. Now we have amidst us Dr. Renu Swarup. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Renu Swarup to this audience, though she actually does not need any introduction, nonetheless. With 29 years of service under her belt, Dr. Renu Swarup took charge as the Secretary, Department of Biotechnology in 2018. She also holds the position of Chairperson, Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, or BIRAC. Dr. Swarup was the founding Managing Director of BIRAC. It will not be an exaggeration to state that it was primarily owing to her indefatigable personality and vision that BIRAC took off on a very strong note. In fact, today the achievements of BIRAC can be attributed largely to Dr. Swarup's vision, energy, and enthusiasm in nurturing this ecosystem, which she is continuing to do as when she moved to a larger role as the chairperson of BIRAC. An example of true excellence in leadership and women empowerment, Dr. Renu Swarup has been closely involved in programs and activities related to women and science. She framed various policies. She was responsible for getting implemented BioCare, the DBT scheme on biotechnology career advancement for women scientists. She has been awarded the BioSpectrum Person of the Year Award in 2012 and has also received the National Entrepreneurship Award 2017, a special jury recognition award for government mentor. With that, I request Dr. Swarup to please take the podium and address this audience.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amitabh. Dr. Mashelkar, Saurabh Srivastava, Amitabh, the people I can see on the screen. Technology has its challenges. You cannot really see who all are with you, but the large number of entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. We had technology innovation challenges, so I had issues in joining in, but I'm so glad I could finally make it. Always a pleasure to be with this big gathering here. Big is growing bigger by the day, and I think that gives me immense pleasure that not only are we here today with this large group, but we have some of our very, very big role models here to come and address all of you. I'm so very pleased that Dr. Mashelkar has kindly consented to be here, Mr. Saurabh Srivastava, and the large list of luminaries and the mentors that you have over these next 2 days. I think today where we are positioned after probably, I think, Manish, 8 years of BIG being in implementation, we really have reached a situation now where our aspirations have become huge. Our expectations from this entrepreneurial innovators team has become much, much larger than what we began. I think it's a right time, and I was reading the theme of your big conclave this year, Resilience Redefined. I think that's very well positioned because it's important for us to look at it, redefine it, and see what is our next path going to be. And here, Dr. Mashelkar, sir, with your permission, your words, which always stay with us, it's not leapfrogging, it's pole vaulting. That's what he says always. And I'm sure he's going to talk about it today again. I think, yes, that's really where we are today. We cannot think of an incremental growth. It's going to be an exponential growth that we have to think of. And if we have to do that, we need to redefine not just the resilience, but I think each and every parameter that we've been putting on our radar to bring us to where we are today. Just a moment to look at the journey of BIG. I still do recall, and it always happens if you're associated with something that has grown, it gives you, the advantage of looking back and saying what the journey was, but it's also important to see what the learnings were so that we move forward. When we started this whole biotech innovation ecosystem growth, and 2012, when we started the BIG scheme, why was this started? This was started because we, from the Department of Biotechnology, which was the first government ministry or department which took on a holistic industrial growth component, where we connected the academia with the industry and we brought the startups into the center stage and said they have to be a connecting point. Before that, we were always looking at technologies being developed within academic institutes, reaching up to a particular level of TRL, say TRL 4, 5, then reaching out to our industry partners and saying, we are ready with technologies, would you come and do a tech transfer and take it forward? After the tech transfer was done, that's it. There was no further, very few cases did we see them becoming partners in the full development of that and taking it to the end stage. We then realized that industry needs to become a co-developer with the academia so that very early on they become partners as we take it forward. And there it was correctly felt that we need to have this large startup community, this large startup group, which brings in the translational component, takes the technologies from the laboratories to the commercial stage, because in the biotech sector, which are technology intensive, it's very, very highly intensive in technologies, you need to bring in a lot of process optimization. You need to bring in not just the idea refinement, but you need to convert an idea into a business enterprise. And I think that is really a challenge as we move ahead. So what was important was, how do we support these young innovators? And when I say young, I don't mean young by age, in no means. It's young by mind, it's young in enthusiasm. And I'm sure when Manish does the profiling of the innovators, he'll let you know that we do have a large number of innovators who are on the other side of 50. So that's young for us as we move on. And that's when we started BIG. But believe me, when we put the acronym BIG, Biotechnology Ignition Grant, it was to ignite that spirit of innovation. We really ourselves did not imagine it will become so big. And I think that's really what has given us the enthusiasm to move forward. It's important to see now that we've been able to cover this ground so well, you have today over 550, 600 of these young BIG grantees. But I would also put the large innovator pool that we have of more than 3,500 startups who also take advantage of this ecosystem that has been set in. And I think what is important in this ecosystem is the peer-to-peer learning. The big partners, our incubators, over 50 incubators, 8 to 10 big partners, and this number is increasing. What are they doing? They're playing a very important role. The role that they are playing is bringing in the mentorship, both technical, both financial, and trying to see how you walk the path of the commercial enterprise. I think what is also more important is what the whole innovation journey requires a lot of risk to be taken. You need to have an appetite for taking risk. And I think that through this big journey is made, that's what we really bring, we bring in a lot of confidence to these big grantees. We connect them to the investors, we connect them to the technical mentor group. So there's a lot of risk mitigation that is done by the support system that is provided. And this risk mitigation which is done gives these big grantees, give these entrepreneurs the level of confidence to take that risk and move forward. Having said all this, in all these years, if we've been able to create this very robust ecosystem of over 50 incubators, more than 3,500 startups, nearly 600 to 700 in your big pool, connecting with large number of international organizations. And I think if all the big partners here today put together their mentor networks, probably I would say the best of the institutes within the country are connected nationally and of course also internationally. I think now it's important for us to do this exponential growth as we move on. Couple of things that we need to keep in mind as we move forward. We've created an ecosystem, but we do have to be the best in the world. How do we do that? So I think it's the quality of the ideas that you take towards becoming a business enterprise which is important. Many people ask me, your success rate for the big grantees is limited to less than 10%. Why don't you enhance your kitty of funds? The kitty of funds could be a limitation, but I think it's also the quality of the ideas that you get in, which is also currently needs to be strengthened much more. We don't want to bring ideas which are not of a level of quality into the journey of becoming an enterprise, because we know that they are not going to move forward. One is, as you move into your journey, there would be certain areas where you would say, okay, we have not done well. I don't call it a failure. I never call it a failure. It's when you learn and you say that you've had certain setbacks in it, you go back to the drawing board, understand what is better and move forward. But in certain cases, you know that this is bound to be a failure. That's when we do not accept them for funding, because we don't want to take them ahead. So I think somewhere we now have to look at enhancing the quality of our innovations. We're becoming a world-recognized startup nation. We also must become a world-recognized innovation nation, where our innovation quality should be at the same level at which the startup ecosystem is growing. And I think that is what is going to take India to the next stage that we're talking about. The investors will have much more confidence to come into the country if they see these high levels of innovation, which are bound to succeed as we move forward. Atmanirbhar Bharat is our clarion call, which our Honorable Prime Minister has given. When we say Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are talking about making for India, but we're also saying making for the world. If we are going to make for the world, we have to be world class, we have to be world quality. Our startups have to be recognized in the global ecosystem. The recent COVID example has put in so much of confidence into our ecosystem. The whole COVID diagnostic development story is a wonderful success story. And I'm looking at all the gurus sitting here who are so good in writing and documenting stories to say, which one of you is going to take this up as a wonderful success story to document? That's a true success our startups have done. We gave them a challenge. In March, when we had the first large number of cases coming in, we realized that we were fully dependent on imported vaccines to come into the country. There were problems in that, the cost, but most importantly, the supply chain disruptions. We were totally dependent on the components coming from outside. We gave them the challenge, can we be fully self-reliant? In less than 60 days, Our startups took this challenge, and we have met the needs of what the country had at that time. That time we were doing just about a lakh testing per day. Of course, it increased now, and now it's over 10 lakhs, all being developed within the country. We realized that components were not being done, and I'm sure Tasleem in his talk will speak to you about how quickly NBRIC came on. What was NBRIC? It was a consortium of industries which were already producing the components for other aspects, primers, reagents, which was nothing so new, but it was just bringing them through this demand aggregation platform. And now we are looking at an NBRIC for vaccines, we're looking at an NBRIC for biotherapeutics and biopharma sector, an NBRIC for every sector. What is NBRIC? NBRIC is the National Biotech Resource Indigenization Consortium. Can we indigenize all our requirements within the country? Meet not only the country's requirement outside. Who will we look to? We will look to these startups. We have that level of confidence that they can take forward. The government has put in a lot of enabling policies. They put in a lot of key drivers for it. But I think the demands which the startups need to make on the ecosystem have to increase. Currently, yes, the demands are there on the financial resources. The demands are there on certain tax incentives and others. I would say the demand should increase in terms of how can we scale up this ecosystem. Your products should be so many that our market size should match that product development that you're putting in. And that really is what the startups should need to look at as you move forward. COVID has brought in a lot of challenges for us. We're all meeting virtually and not physically. It would be so wonderful to walk in the lawns of the IIT Kanpur and have excellent conversations, which we would have loved to do, Amitabh, but we can't do that. We're all sitting virtually. But there is an advantage in this. The opportunity is you probably connected over 700 to 1,000 people, which you may not have been able to do if travels were to be involved. So let's make the best of it. You have the global connects now. We can reach out globally and let them know what is available. But I would only say, and I've been saying this for some time now, let's look at scalability, but let's look at sustainability of this ecosystem. The sustainability of the ecosystem would come when every stakeholder has confidence on this ecosystem. Whether it's the academia, which helps in generating this research leads, whether it's the startups and the smaller enterprises who translate them, whether it's the large industries. Are the industries willing to come in and now put in their investments and funding along with us to support large national missions, which would have startups to be able to drive them? I think that's the level of confidence that we must be able to bring in these entrepreneurs as we take this ahead. So I think that is really what we from the government would love to see, that while we become partners in your various investment funds, can we have others who will come in, and not only nationally, internationally as well. And I'm confident that this ecosystem can bring out that level of confidence in all the others globally and nationally as well. The last point that I would like to leave with our innovators here is, today it's important, in fact this is more for the big partners, not just for the innovators. Today, why don't you just profile all your startups and see? I think we've sort of tapped into the best of all the IITs already. We've tapped into the best of the national research laboratories already, the ICERs. How much have you tapped into the university ecosystem? I think that's your challenge now. How do you penetrate deeper into the university ecosystem? How do you penetrate into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities to try and bring in? We have excellent talent there. When we do the scheme, when we do the university innovation clusters, the EUVA scheme, we do reach out there. But I think connecting them is important now. So big needs a backward and forward linkage both. While you're doing excellent, and you need to see how you do that as well. So I would stop here by saying it's not just big in terms of size. There are big expectations. There are big demands on this big community. And I would like to see the big community putting out much, much larger ambitions for yourself so that your targets get much larger and the country can then take the 2025 target of 150 billion, a lot of it would come from this group that is here. So thank you very much, all of you, and thank you so much for organizing this, and good luck for the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swarup, for that outstanding speech and inspiration and encouragement coming from you. It means a lot to all of us, my friends at BIRAC and all the big partners and associate partners. And, as the momentum is on, I think it is time that we get really inspired by the man who is known to inspire the entire scientific and technology community in the country. And I would ask my friend Dr. Manish Diwan to do the honors. Kindly introduce Dr. R.A. Mashelkar to this audience.
Thank you, Amitabh. With great pleasure, I am privileged to introduce Dr. Mashelkar, a voice that inspires many, truly. And Dr. Mashelkar would be very happy to see how this ecosystem is pole vaulting and going forward. Dr. Mashelkar, although requires no introduction, he's a Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar awardee, and a firm believer of making innovation a way of life in Indian industry. He was the former Director General of CSIR. He is a Fellow of Royal Society, Royal Academy of Engineers, and Institution of Chemical Engineers, respectively. He was among the first 3 engineers to be elected as a member of the Royal Society, London. He's been a member of Scientific Advisory Board and Cabinet-appointed Scientific Advisory Board as well. And he has led several national-level, very important critical committees to study topics including higher education, national fuel policy, drug regulatory system, and the agricultural research. That list is fairly long. Sir has brought the knowledge of patenting also into the field of science. So we are privileged to have Dr. Mashelkar in here, and we really look forward to his inspiring remarks to the young entrepreneurs and the growing big community. I think Dr. Mashelkar just logged out, it seems.
Maybe having just a little bit glitch with the connection, and I'm sure he will.
And as Dr. Swarup mentioned, the big expectations which are growing day by day, and we would like to scale the big ecosystem. And with Dr. Mashelkar's inspiration, I think we can find a new direction and a scope where we can penetrate not only in India, in tier 2 cities, but globally also, and take this biotech innovation system as a shining piece in the jewel for the country. Over to you, Dr. Mashelkar.
Thank you very much. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, sir, very clearly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Honorable Jai Sinha, Dr. Renu Swarup, Amitabh Bandyopadhyay, my dear friend Suresh Saurabh Srivastava, Manish Diwan, Nikhil Agarwal, the wonderful technopreneurs, innovators that we have today with us, ladies and gentlemen. Renu, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this privilege to join this 6th edition of BIRAC's Big Conclave. You use the word big again and again, and I love that. And you also said we are going bigger. I want you to grow biggest, right at the top, and you will be. And biggest not only in terms of numbers, but as you rightly emphasize, the quality of ideas. We want game-changing ideas. We don't want renovation. We want innovation, real innovation, not incremental, disruptive, game-changing. And I hope you become the biggest, and I'm quite sure with your leadership, you will. I am great admirer of BIRAC, what Department of Biotechnology has been able to do. I think it is absolutely incredible. And I think it is time that we also remember someone who passed, who left us on 26 January this year, Professor M.K. Bhan, our friend, who was really the founding father of this entire movement, and you work shoulder to shoulder with him, and you have taken up the mantle, Renu, and you are doing an incredible job. So I'm very, very proud of you. The way you have actually moved. I was very happy to see the numbers that you talked about, but also to see the kind of follow-up funding that you had, because big is igniting, that is creating the initial spark, but you require continuous fuel in order to sort of move forward. So I think that record is a wonderful one, and that's the way forward really, because finally we have to move from ideas to impact. And for making a real impact finally in the society, I think that's what is going to be the key. I find the theme that you have chosen, Resilience Redefined, is a fantastic one. If you do a Google search, you will find the word that was most sought after during the last 6 months or so is resilience. You will see a peak there. And why is it? Because the coronavirus pandemic has been a devastation in terms of loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, the rapidity and the impact of which has been phenomenal. I mean, within 100 million families were plummeted from poverty to extreme poverty just within 100 days. 450 million jobs were lost. 1.6 billion children were thrown out of school within 100 days. And only 1/3 of them have access, digital access. So we are talking about reconstruction, we are talking about repair, recovery. But I think this is also an opportunity for us to reimagine, not just repair and recover, reimagine ourselves, reinvent ourselves. And I think this is supposed to be the biggest agenda. The theme of resilience is very important because you have to first survive in order to succeed, and that requires resilience. The subject is extremely relevant today, and I've been speaking on this, thinking about this, both on national as well as international fora. And recently I proposed these 10 tenets of resilience: adaptability, agility, resilient thinking, scenario-based planning, building a purpose-driven organization, platformization, digitalization or digital readiness, ability to foster self-disruption, climate preparedness, autonomous innovation. These are the 10 tenets for resilience. Now, this is the running theme of this conference. I thought I would share with you some of the thoughts that I expressed earlier. The former chief of CSIRO from Australia, Dr. Jeff Garrett, actually interviewed me and on this subject of resilience. So that is up there on the website, Australian Citizen Science Association. Then I had also given a talk with regard to innovation during and after the pandemic and the role of resilience, and also address, this was all based on individual, institutional resilience, societal resilience, national resilience, and so on. But on specifically on enterprise, I spoke to some 8,000 odd employees of Reliance, particularly at the entrepreneurial level. So I will send you links of sort of two of these which are in the open domain, because you might want to pass them on to your participants, because there is some research and nuanced stuff in some of these which I can't sort of mention here because my theme is on innovation-led entrepreneurship. I thought I will begin with that by first congratulating you on choice of this wonderful theme. I don't want to disappoint you because you said that I'm sure you are going to talk about pole vaulting. Yes, I'm indeed going to talk about pole vaulting. This book, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, was one that I wrote with my friend Ravi Pandit. And this, I'm very proud to say, won the 2019 Best Business Book of the Year award. But more importantly, what I have seen is that it has captured the imagination. I was very pleasantly surprised when on May 26th, I heard our chief of staff talk about this in the context of actioning the incentives that the finance minister had announced. And he said, I read this book a couple of days ago, and that's what we need to do. It cannot be business as usual. The nation must pole vault. So, I'm not disappointing you. I'm going to talk about sort of pole vaulting, and that what I want to say and sort of emphasize is the nation of the mood in terms of pole vaulting. Yesterday I was speaking in the our international Indian Sanitation Coalition FICCI Awards. I've been chairing that committee for the awards committee for the last 4 years. And there I mentioned about this pole vault in terms of sanitation. I mean, making the entire country defecation free within just 5 years is a big pole vault, not gradual, incremental, and so on and so forth. If you see the world's fastest financial inclusion, and I'm very happy that we have the privilege of Jayant Sinha here. And we have seen, how now 400 million plus Jan Dhan accounts have been opened. And we also won got the Guinness Book of Records, basically. If you see, for example, we achieved the world's largest lighting replacement, with this project on affordable LEDs for all, Ujala. Speed, scale, and sustainability, all three. Speed, because we moved from 0.3% market share to 80% market share within 8 to 9 years. If you look at the price, it plummeted from $7 to $1. What we would have done in 5 years in terms of adaptation of technology, we did it in 6 months. Speed and scale, both, but also sustainability. 3 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, which would have emitted otherwise. That carbon footprint we have basically eliminated, and what difference it can make. I'll just give you 4 examples, but I think the main point I want to make, having talked about resilience, talking about the mood of the nation, not just leapfrogging a few feet because you're afraid of your predator or enemy, but pole vaulting, the size of the pole is the size of your aspiration. So keeping the size of the aspiration is sort of critical. You mentioned about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Yes, our Prime Minister has inspired us by giving this dream. But that Atmanirbhar Bharat has to be with Atmavishwas, with Atma Sanman. It can't be going back to the import substitution day by closing our doors, closing our windows, and so on and so forth. Be a part of the global supply chain and basically compete with confidence. I think that is very important. And we have to build up this new ecosystem. Therefore, for the startups, when we began, we were a starting up nation. So as to say, when we announced this startup nation idea, but very quickly we are moving as a startup nation. I'm very proud. I think Manish, you mentioned to me about how the startups have responded, right, during the sort of COVID time. And I have been watching it with great pride in terms of how they have responded. In fact, it is interesting that on 11th, this 11th Indo-US Business Council meeting in Atlanta, they had invited me to give the opening keynote, and the first session was technology and innovation. And I chose to spoke about the way science, technology, and innovation in India has responded to the COVID sort of situation, and what even US can learn from what we have done, like the Dharavi experiment that we talk about, where Los Angeles Times said that the US can learn from this, and how it was sort of made possible. Now, if you see the quality of what they have done, that is very important. That is not renovation. That's a real innovation. See, for example, one of your big grantees has been DOSI, right? Now, DOSI is a continuous contact-free vitals monitor with remote monitoring capabilities and an alert system that can convert any bed. They use IoT. They can convert any bed into a step-down ICU within couple of minutes, basically. All right. And most important is affordability and excellence. Affordable, it is 1/10 of what the ICU monitoring systems will cost. And excellence, because it is 98.4% medical grade. Can you just imagine the entire country is suffering? Even US has problems today in terms of ICU bed shortage and so on and so forth. What difference this can make, as a matter of fact? Similarly, this Cure.ai that I mentioned several, but I'm just giving you examples, which detects any lung infection in less than 2 minutes with just $2 being the sort of expense. And they use artificial intelligence for doing that. And the widespread screening that was done in Dharavi very fast, they were a critical part of that. Can you just take this? So what I'm saying is that where Saurabh, we have been talking about digital re-engineering of businesses, I think this is digital re-engineering of our health systems, basically. And this can be truly transformative, as a matter of fact, and how can we sort of move on this, I think is the critical point. I also want to emphasize that Indian innovation is something very special because we require system that will work in India. For example, look at ventilators. All right, we had recently a big power breakdown in Mumbai. So you will find that the challenges of no compressed medical air being available, frequent power cuts, limited trained technical staff, etc. So we have to create systems which work under Indian conditions. That is what I call innovation. I chaired this Marico Innovation Foundation Grand Challenge, 2.5 crore. And I remember sort of selecting, our committee selecting, as a matter of fact, innovators, where all the 3 entries in ventilators were made for these Indian conditions that I basically talked about. And I'm very proud to say, Nokka, Amitabh, I can see you are smiling. It came from IIT Kanpur. And they were in robotics and they moved into this. And they have created something sort of wonderful. So what I'm saying is that, people call me a dangerous optimist, Durdamya Ashavadi. I feel confident, Saurav. Our generation now, it's the 4th inning that we are playing. This young generation, which is playing the 1st inning, they are playing a 2020 game, to be honest. And that makes me really sort of very optimistic. Last 2 points I'd like to make. I've been given 20 minutes. I want to finish before that because I'm very keen to hear Jayant Sinha ji. Important part is that both corporates and government are playing a role now. Big corporates are looking at acquisition of talent and technology through startups, by the way. All right. So we have to move from the academic incubators like in IIT to corporate accelerators and scalerators. All right. Now, for example, I chair this GeoGenNext, which is the biggest corporate accelerator in the country. And it is amazing the kind of talent and technology acquisitions that are being done today in this, and we can learn so much. And it's a win-win because as far as the startups are concerned, by partnering with the big corporates, they learn how the big thinking is done by big businesses, basically how they build new products, how do they scale up, and so on and so forth. Similarly, the opportunities of discovery, which you would have taken, say, 18 to 24 months, you do it in few weeks by just sort of partnering with them, that knowledge gets transmitted and so forth. In fact, one predicts now that in 2021, and Saurabh, you can correct me, maybe 50% all B2B and B2B2C, these startups will get connected in this particular way. So the corporates have a big role to play, I would say. If you hold their hands, you will have to run at their pace. You can't crawl. So I would strongly encourage this. The other thing is, of course, government being the big marketplace. So the theme has to be government for startups and startups for government. How do we work with each other? And of course, when there is a new startup, there is this challenge, tendering and so on and so forth. So Saurabh, I jocularly say, it is like Sachin Tendulkar scoring a century in his first test at 15, but denying the sort of test debut because where is your 10-year experience for that 15-year-old? So I'm very happy that this is changing now, Jayanji, and there are lot of refreshing things are happening. For example, there is a challenge with regard to competitive bids, and there are now exceptions that are being made for startups. All right. How do you ensure their reliability? So this book, the third chapter, there is a framework for what is called as assured innovation: affordable, scalable, sustainable, user-friendly, all right, rapid, excellence in terms of technology, and distinctive. And these are not qualitative, but semi-quantitative measures can be made. And some of these frameworks are being used. I co-chair the Maharashtra State Innovation Society, for example. We have created a new startup policy where we are actually making big difference in terms of the issues regarding prior experience, issues regarding turnover, security deficit, etc., etc. And we are beginning to see the difference, actually. So we require these different models where the government changes its public procurement policy. In fact, Amitabh Kant brought out a book last year about 17 things that can change, transform India. He had asked me to write one. And I have talked about an innovative public procurement policy, which can make sort of all the difference. So this is something that we need to move on. There is a job to do for corporates. There is a job to do for government. The last point, and with this I will close in 3-4 minutes. I think the key points are talent, technology, and trust. Trust, I think, is extremely important. Trust in our own products. Trust in our. That's why I said Atmanirbhar Bharat is Atma Vishwas. Do you have confidence? Saurabh, you will remember Ashok Jhunjhunwala, his wireless local loop got implemented in Brazil and Madagascar first before it was implemented here. You remember that? Vara Prasad Reddy, who became a star, with hepatitis B vaccine, the struggle that he had here, and finally he ended up with UNICEF 40% share. All right. Naveen Khanna, Renu, you will remember his dengue test. By the way, Jayanji, this will interest you. He does it in 15 minutes time, and you also know at what stage you are. 15 minutes, not a couple of days, right? You wouldn't get market entry. It was we were buying from South Korea, Australia, US, and then a breakup, dengue pandemic came, and all the kits were exhausted. What do we do now? All right. Then everybody said no. South Korea said we'll send, but unfortunately, or fortunately for us, it was loaded in the wrong ship and it went to Africa. So we had no kits. So we had no alternative to go to Naveen Khanna. So he got a chance there because the ship did not come. And today his share is not 0%, it is 78%. Now imagine that ship had come at the time. So these are ground realities: talent, technology, and trust. I think it's extremely important that we trust ourselves, basically. Finally, I'd like to end by, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs here. I'm 77 years old now, and from my book of life, I will just pick up 5 mantras which have worked for me. I hope they will work for you. I think the first is aspirations. Keep your aspirations high. If you aim at Everest, at least you will reach Kanchenjunga. But if you aim at Kanchenjunga, you will go to Hanuman Tekri. And if you aim at Hanuman Tekri, you will stay where you are. So keep them high. I think that is very, very important. And you have seen cases. Like I remember, Jayanji, this TDICI was the first venture capital company. I mean, I was on their board. Wagul Saab had got me on the board. And I remember at that time, our Kiran Muzumdar, she started in a garage with 10,000 rupees with one spectrometer. And today she's $6 billion, 11,000 employees today, So I think the point I want to make is that you can't change the beginning, but you can change the end. That's for sure. I think that should be the aspiration. The second is hard work. There is no substitute. Like instant coffee, I want to tell the young people, there is no instant success. 24/7. I'm 77. I work 24/7, day after day, week after week, month after month, and I will do so until the last day of my life. So please understand, success doesn't come. Like you will look at Usain Bolt. He just did 115 seconds of running and $109 million he earned. All right, and won 8 gold medals. But for those 2 minutes of running, he trained for 20 years. Please understand that. So you see the success, but what is behind it, you must understand. That is second Mashelkar mantra. The third is doors. You keep on knocking on the doors of opportunity. If they don't open, create your own doors. I remember when I came back to NCL in 1976, I would wait for 2 years for getting my first Weisenberg-Ryogan I said, I didn't want to wait for 2 years. I created a new door by moving into modeling and simulation, where within 5 years I got the Bhatnagar Prize for that particular work. Had I been waiting for that door, where would I be, basically? So do that. The fourth point, Mashelkar mantra, is perseverance pays. Too early to quit. Winners are never quitters. Quitters are never winners. And you will on the way see failures. But interpret fail in a different way. First attempt in learning, FAIL, first attempt in learning. Your best guru is your last mistake, as long as you learn from it. So that's the fourth one. And the fifth one, and I'll finish with this, I say that there is no limit to human endurance, no limit to human imagination, no limit to human achievement. Endurance we have seen, resilience we talk about, we have seen endurance. That Jyoti Paswan driving her father on a bicycle, to her village in Bihar, 1,200 kilometers in 8 days. They are now making a film. All right. So that is what it is. And I have personally experienced it. I'll tell you the story and I'll close. While introducing me, they said I became a fellow of Royal Society. Yes. Very interesting, somebody had told me that if you become FRS, you sign in the book that Newton has signed. And I had the pleasure of doing it. So while learning science and learning Newton's laws, I did not realize I will sign in that. So I was very happy, and I remember I called my guru, Bharat Ratna Professor C.N.R. Rao, and said, "Sir, I have become FRS." I thought we would go wild with happiness. He said, "Not bad." So I was very disappointed. Then I became a fellow of American Academy of Arts and Science, only the seventh one from 1780. So I thought, now you'll be impressed. So I called him. What was his response? Not bad. Then I became US National Academy of Inventors. There, Saurabh, I was not the third or seventh, I was the first. So I said, now you will get impressed. He said, not bad. Then I got upset. I said, sir, what do I do to impress you? Then he said, Mashelkar, you are riding, not Mashelkar, he said Ramesh, because he calls me Ramesh. You are climbing on a ladder of excellence, which is limitless. There are no limits excepting the limits you put on your head, basically. All right. So that gives me the message with which I will leave you. What it means is that no matter what you achieve in life, you have to say your best is yet to come. So my suggestion to you all is the following, that every day that you get up, you are in 20s now or 30s now, you will be 89, you will be 99. Every day in the morning that you get up, you say, my best is yet to come, and maybe today is the day that it will come. And you can see what it will do not only to yourself, to the society, but to the nation if you do that. Thank you, Renu, for having me.
So, thank you, Dr. Mashelkar. That was inspiring indeed. I'm sure the young entrepreneurs who are young at heart, as Dr. Swarup said, will take a few notes from what you stated, and they will be on their way to excellence. And I'm sure all of them, including us, best is yet to come, and we will be looking forward to that. Now, with that inspiring talk, I will now request an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, that's his first introduction for me, and a member of the board of our incubator first, Dr. Saurabh Srivastava, to kindly do the honors of introducing our chief guest for the event today, Mr. Jayant Sinha.
Mr. Saurabh Srivastava, before you introduce Mr. Jayant Sinha, I would first like to welcome him so much on behalf of the Department of Biotechnology. And sir, before they give a formal introduction of yours, I would like this audience to know, and I don't think you remember it either, I was an additional secretary in this department at that time when you were the MOS Finance. And we came to you with one piece of paper on which you had said the entrepreneurial ecosystem needs to grow. And that is what was the basis for the Atal Innovation Mission, which has been launched today. So it was actually Mr. Sinha who took a meeting in his office, and I, as the additional secretary from here, from the biotechnology department, went, and sir, we had presented a paper to you, which you had so readily agreed to. And when we came back, the biggest satisfaction we had is that we've been able to sell our idea to the finance ministry. As an additional secretary and my director level officers, that was great for us. And all of you have seen what Atal Innovation Mission has done today. So that is what has been really a contribution which Mr. Sinha has made. Thank you, sir, on behalf of everybody. And we know your love and passion for the entrepreneurs. That's how it is. So thank you. Sorry, Mr. Srivastav, I had to come in to make this introduction and then hand it over to you to take it forward. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Srivastav.
No, Dr. Swaroop, actually, that is probably one of the best introductions that he would have liked. Just before I introduce him, I wanted to say that my morning is already made. I mean, the numbers I heard from you, Dr. Swaroop, were phenomenal. You know, it took us, the IT industry today is 10% of India's GDP, $200+ billion. It took us a longer time to get there. What you have done in 5 years, largely led by you, we have a biotech industry that will hit the same number in almost a quarter or a third of the time. And although the IT industry we built by mostly servicing people overseas, this industry will transform India. So I just wanted to say thank you. I've been connected with you. It's been a pleasure. I'm really listening to Dr. Mathelkar, who is the country's guru in science and technology and also mine. His inspiration, the dangerous optimism, and the connect that he makes between science, technology, and entrepreneurship. And I don't know if he remembers, but maybe 25 years ago or longer, I visited you, Dr. Mathelkar, with my friend Lakshmi Venkatesan. We were trying to create entrepreneurship amongst the underprivileged. And you completely opened my eyes to what government could do. I had a different vision of government at that time. That session with you was transformational. So I don't know what the country would have done without you.
Thank you.
So with that, you know, it really is a pleasure for me to introduce somebody who I've had the privilege of having had as a friend for 2 or 3 decades now, long before he got into politics. So as all of you know, Mr. Jayant Sinha is a second-term member of parliament from Jharkhand in India. And he won his Lok Sabha elections in 2014 and 19 with absolutely record margins. Right now, he's chairperson of the Standing Committee for Finance, and he leads a 31-member parliamentary panel that has oversight of the Ministries of Finance, Corporate Affairs, Statistics and Program Implementation, and also Niti Aayog. And in addition, this panel also has parliamentary responsibility for the RBI, SEBI, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board, and the Insurance and Pension Regulatory Authorities. Before that, he's actually served on the Council of Ministers twice in 2 different capacities, Minister of State for Finance, and then as Minister of State for Civil Aviation. And he's gained recognition as an innovative and results-oriented policymaker and has had tremendous success. In the finance area, he piloted the game-changing bankruptcy code. He established India's first sovereign wealth fund, infrastructure investment fund, and one that many of you are aware of, the 1,000 crore startup fund of funds. That one fund has changed the level of capital available to Indian startups in India, and it has ended up creating the Indian venture capital industry. Before that, 95% of India's capital in VC came from overseas. That has changed. And all of this was necessary for what Dr. Swaroop has been trying to do in the biotech industry. Then as civil aviation, he established repeated privatization of multiple airports under a new regulatory framework. He launched UDAN, the regional connectivity scheme, and that expanded the operational airports in India by 50% in just 3 years. And he almost single-handedly created and drove and made happen his own policy in India, which really allowed. Before that, he was in the private sector, in the world of investment, and partner at MODI Network, managing director for India, and he made investments in several companies. Two of them were unicorns. Before that, he was at McKinsey, where he was a partner in Boston and also Delhi. And I want to pick up the McKinsey piece because he and I worked on what became the base document for Indian IT industry. I was chairman of NASSCOM at the time, and I worked with him, and we created the NASSCOM McKinsey study, basically which predicted that we would go from 2 billion to 50 billion in less than a 10-year framework. And that happened almost to the dot. He writes in many places, including the very prestigious McKinsey Quarterly. He has an MBA from the Harvard Business School, an MS in Energy in Policy and Management from the University of Pennsylvania, and a BTech from IIT Delhi, where he's been awarded the Distinguished Alumni Award. My only regret is he chose the wrong IIT. And you know, I must tell you, Amitabh, that IIT Delhi getting selected as one of the Institutes of Excellence, they had a lot of guidance from Jayat Sinha, and that's why it would have been good to have him as an IIT Kanpur alumnus. So please find a way to somehow get him into IIT. So with that, over to him.
Thank you very much, Saurabh, for that extremely kind introduction, and thank you, Srimati Renu Swarupji, also for your kind words. I'm very privileged today to be on this very distinguished panel with two of my gurus on this panel, Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Srivastav, of course, and to share the panel with Srimati Renu Swarupji, and of course, our distinguished friends from IIT Kanpur, Professor Bandyopadhyay, Dr. Manish Dewan, and of course, Dr. Nikhil Agarwal as well. So thank you all for having me. It's a great opportunity to share some thoughts with friends and colleagues at IIT Kanpur and in your incubator and in the larger entrepreneurial community as well. So once again, thank you very much. And it's actually quite difficult to follow the very wonderful inspired words of Dr. Mashelkar. So I'm sure whatever I say after his comments is going to be very pika, as they say in Hindi. But let me give you some of my thoughts on innovation and entrepreneurship. And as all of you have noted, this is an area of great passion for me. Obviously, as an engineer, as somebody who's a science junkie, and I will say my favorite TV show is The Big Bang Theory for obvious reasons, because it's a show about people who love science, as I do as well. You know, the Honorable Prime Minister has given us a very inspiring and very important guidance, and that is around Atmanirbhar Bharat. And when I think about Atmanirbhar Bharat, exactly as Dr. Mashelkar was saying, it's not about autarky, it's not about turning inwards. In fact, it's about turning outwards very confident in various ways. And Honorable Prime Minister, you'll see he asserts that over and over again. And so what I think of Atmanirbhar Bharat, in my own way, I've kind of coined an equation, which is A and B, Atmanirbhar Bharat, A and B equals CSR. So A and B equals CSR. And what are CSR? If we have to be Atmanirbhar Bharat, what are the three things we have to be? We have to be competitive. We have to be globally competitive. We have to be at the competitive frontier. Two, we have to be sustainable. which means we don't just have to be at the competitive frontier. That frontier has to be a green frontier. That frontier has to be a green frontier. That is, we have to really think about sustainability, particularly in light of all the challenges that we face around carbon emissions, around traffic congestion, around pollution, around water scarcity. We have a lot of sustainability issues, not just in India, but globally. So if we be of course, we be globally competitive, but we also have to pursue a sustainable trajectory. And the third point, which of course Dr. Mashelkar spoke about, so I'm not going to repeat much of that, is around resilience. So if we get to the green frontier, as I call it, if we get to the green frontier, we have to stay at the green frontier. We can't have a big exogenous shock, whether it is a health crisis, whether it is an economic issue, or anything else that will get us off the green frontier. And so that is the key for us, to reach Atmanirbharta, to be able to project ourselves in a way that is sustainable, that is resilient, that is competitive. We really have to be able to follow this whole equation. Atmanirbhar Bharat equals competitive, sustainable, resilient. So that's in short my equation. Now, even as we think about this equation of getting to the green frontier, we have to recognize that the development model India should follow has to be very different from the development model that has been followed by other countries as they've gone through their economic development. So traditionally, when you speak to economists, and I now speak as an engineer, not as an economist, I have many good friends who are economists, but I always tell them the problem is that they are economists. And the difference between engineers and economists is that economists always look backwards and engineers always look forward, right? So we think about innovation, we think about, what needs to happen. But the problem with economists is they look backwards and they say, if this is what happens, talk about development, they always talk about the development model that the West has followed and that China and Japan and Korea have followed. And that model has been what is called farm to factory. It's been called farm to factory. And it's been driven by two vectors. You take people who are low productivity agriculture, and you move them to factories. And essentially you have urbanization happening on one vector, and you have industrialization happening on the other vector. And that, of course, improves productivity, both urbanization, more densification, more people concentrated so they can produce more. And of course, industrialization, so you increase productivity instead of low productivity agriculture, you're producing more in factories. So farm to factory, when you talk to an economist, they'll say what India needs to do is to go from farm to factory. But I can tell you, and I say this as somebody who is a representative of the people and is a Lok Sabha member, is that I can't take the millions and crores of Indians who are in rural areas and move them into Bangalore to work in a textile factory making shirts outside of Bangalore. I can't take Bhola Mehto, who is a voter in my constituency, and I say, you're making 7,000-8,000 rupees a month as a paddy farmer. आप धान की खेती कर रहे हैं, धान की खेती छोड़कर 15,000 रुपए तनख्वाह में आप बैंगलोर में जाकर आप शर्ट की कोई फैक्ट्री में काम करने लग जाइए. If I were to say to Bhola Mehto that is the way he needs to think about his development, he will reject it, because nobody is going to leave Tati Jharia block in Hazaribagh to go and work for a 15,000 rupee job outside of Bangalore. So that trajectory, that pathway of farm to factory is not even attractive to Bhola Mehto, nor is it possible for India given the overcapacity we have in manufacturing, given the sustainability issues and so on. So we really, what we cannot do is to follow the farm to factory development model. That I don't think is possible for India any longer, no matter what the economists may say, no matter what they may say of premature deindustrialization in India and so on. That doesn't work. So farm to factory as a development model for India, I don't think is the right pathway for us. It's not the pathway for development. It's not the pathway. We shouldn't do manufacturing, and we shouldn't do labor-intensive manufacturing. Of course, we should. But I think we have a better development model that we need to think about. And it's coming back again to this idea of frontier that I spoke about. So instead of farm to factory, I think we should go to farm to green frontier. And that green frontier is what I said earlier. It's the competitive frontier, it's the sustainable frontier, and it's the resilient frontier. If we can go farm to green frontier instead of farm to factory, that for India is a much better development model. Now, I will tell you what this means for Bhola Mehto, but I'll also tell you what it means for India and what it means for policy making. So those are the three ways in which we need to think about what farm to green frontier means. So when I say that Bhola Mehto should not go and work in a shirt textile factory outside of Bangalore, I don't think that Bhola Mehto should leave Tati Jharia block in Hazaribagh and go and run as also is like farm to factory, in the sense that you are working in something that's in the informal sector, you don't have security, you're not using technology, and your productivity is not very high. So if you go from being a farmer in Tati Jharia block to being an auto rickshaw driver in Ranchi, you may increase your income from 7,000 rupees a month to maybe 15,000 rupees a month at most. But it's not sustainable, it's still informal, it's still polluting and all of that. So my suggestion is that to get Bhola Mehto to the green frontier, we need to take Bhola Mehto and we need to make him part of a high-tech supply chain. Because if we can give him the tools that will increase his productivity so he can produce more. If he can produce more, he can earn more. And he can earn more in a way that is both green and sustainable. And that is what will give him an answer to prosperity. To just follow what Dr. Mashelkar was saying, not the leapfrog answer, but the pole vault answer. The only way to pole vault is to use technology. So what should we do with Bhola Mehto? Should he go and drive an auto rickshaw outside of Ranchi? No. Instead, what he needs to do is, he needs to become, hopefully, a driver in a ride-sharing company like Ola or Uber, where he's driving an electric vehicle or an electric rickshaw, where his dispatch is happening through a mobile platform, through his mobile smartphone. And his payment systems are based on UPI and so on. And so when somebody sits in his electric rickshaw or in his electric car, the dispatching has been done automatically. His productivity is high. There's less downtime for him. The payment is done electronically. He's paid electronically. And because the customer has immediately had their money deducted from their bank account, is then sent to Bhola Mehto's bank account. So the whole supply chain, the whole value chain in which Bhola Mehto is plugged into is a completely digitized, completely high-tech supply chain, which enables him to increase his productivity, and therefore increases his earnings. So that's one example of how Bhola Mehto can go from where he is in the farm to being at the green frontier, working for an Ola or an Uber with an electric vehicle, with all the dispatch and all the payment happening with a smartphone interface. And that enables him to become much more productive, to be at the competitive frontier. Another example for Bhola Mehto to get to the green frontier is for him to become somebody who's supplying to a high-tech dairy chain. So if we can get him plugged into a very high-tech dairy processing industry, where there is a very high value-add manufacturing close to Bhola Mehto, then he can have 4 cows, 10 cows. The milk from the cows is taken from him every day at a village collection center. He's immediately paid every day at that village collection center. The money comes to him directly. And then from that village collection center, the milk goes to a processing factory where that milk is not made into pouch milk. It is made into ice cream. It is made into milkshakes in a Tetra Pak. It is made into butter or ghee. So again, in this example, Bhola Mehto is not doing something that is a farm to factory type production. He's doing farm to green frontier type production. He's staying in his area. He's staying in Jharkhand, but he's plugged into a high-tech supply chain which increases his productivity and enables him to make 30, 40, 50,000 rupees a month staying where he is. He doesn't have to go to Bangalore. He doesn't crowd the city. But the only way we can get him to pole vault is by using technology. Now, I just spoke about Bhola Mehto, but this is equally true for Geeta Oraon. So Geeta Oraon is, somebody is a tribal lady in Patratu, which is another block in Hazaribagh. Now, if we can get Geeta Oraon plugged into a high-tech supply chain so that she has a sewing robot, she becomes part of a company that is producing kurtas that are custom made. Then, as and when somebody orders online a kurta with custom fabric, custom design, that order can come to Geeta Oraon in Patratu, She has a sewing robot. She can make the kurta. Then, a delivery service comes, picks it up, and takes it to the person in Delhi who has ordered that custom kurta. Now, suddenly, Geeta Oraon is part of a high-tech supply chain, a fully digital supply chain, and she gets it designed digitally. She gets the fabric given to her digitally, and she's able to supply it through a delivery service. Suddenly, Geeta Oraon does not have to go work in a textile factory in Gurgaon. She can do what she needs to do where she is in Patrato. So that's how we can transform the lives of people. And if we can transform the lives of people, plug them into these high productivity supply chains so they can produce more, they can earn more, suddenly we are on the trajectory to the green frontier. We don't have to follow the old paradigm looking backwards on farm to factory. Now we are following a very different paradigm, which is farm to green frontier. We're taking our people, keeping them in situ where they are, but we're equipping them with the tools that enable them to become much more productive and much more able to improve their skills over time. So that is the key, farm to green frontier. Now, if that's what it means for Bhola Mehto, real people looking for real jobs, looking for real income, and Geeta Oraon, what does that mean? What does that mean for policymakers? What does that mean for industry? Now, I think the key to giving Bhola Mehto and Geeta Oraon better lives, more prosperous, sustainable, is that we have to really enable green industries and green innovation to happen in India. And there's a whole range of industries that we really have to promote. And these can include everything associated with green mobility, electric mobility. We have a tremendous transformation ahead of us in electric mobility. If you've driven a Tesla, you'll see that there is a paradigm change that is happening in electric mobility. You have a computer on wheels as opposed to putting computers onto cars. So we have to really transform the way we think about electric mobility. In India, of course, we have to take the 15 million two-wheelers that we make every year and make them all electric. And we have to create a grid, a renewable energy grid that powers, all of electric transportation, and obviously helps in power production as well. So green industries, certainly when it comes to transportation, electric mobility. Similarly, food processing. I gave you the example of high-end dairy processing. We can do much more. Plastic used for pouch milk. That's a terrible, terrible thing that we're doing to our environment with this pouch milk plastic, completely spoiling our lakes, our rivers, all of our cities. We have to get rid of this plastic pouch milk. We have to go to recyclables. We have to go to green packaging technologies. For that, we need advanced food processing. That is crucial as well. Similarly, we need to do much more when it comes to water, sanitation, wastewater management, drinking water. All of those areas are green industries. We need to push that. There are green industries that we need to push in terms of waste management as well. Our cities are among the worst in the world when it comes to waste management. We have to improve waste management. We really need to enable that to happen. We've got to push further on digitization of our financial services. Absolutely, we have to really, really invest in our healthcare infrastructure, in biotech, and everything that Dr. Mashelkar was saying. So as I look at all the green industries that are possible, there are just an abundance of these green industries. There's an abundance of innovation that can happen, that can enable people to get good jobs, high-paying jobs that are in green industries that we need in India and that the world needs from us as well. So we really need to drive these green industries. We need to, our innovators and our entrepreneurs, to really go out and invest in these areas, do the innovation, do the entrepreneurship that's necessary to drive these green industries. So that's what we need our companies to do. That's what we need our entrepreneurs to do. That's what we need our entrepreneurial ecosystem to do, to solve the problems, not of Union Square in San Francisco, not to solve the problems of Piccadilly Circus in London, not to solve the problem of Times Square in New York City. We have to solve the problems of Jhanda Chowk in Hazaribagh. That's what we need to do. We have to solve Jhanda Chowk's problems, not Times Square's problems. And that's what will enable us to get to the green, that will enable us to really get onto this path of being competitive, being sustainable, being resilient. So that's what we need to do for Bhola Mehto and Geeta Oraon. That's what our entrepreneurs need to do, is to develop these green industries, solve India's problems, solve Jhanda Chowk's problems. Now, I'll come to my final point. What is it that the government needs to do? And here, Dr. Swaroop is on this panel. She's listening to us. here is where I think we need to really get our bureaucracy geared up with a very different mindset. I think as policymakers, as political executives, we have been saying this over and over again, which is that we need innovation, we need investment, we need growth. All of these things you'll hear consistently from our senior leaders, from policymakers, and so on. We really need our bureaucrats now to become much more market friendly, much more market friendly. Because ultimately, whatever we might say as being the political executive, ultimately today what our entrepreneurs have to deal with is the government, is the system, is the bureaucracy. And here we need our bureaucrats to realize that they are facilitators, that their job is to unleash market forces, not regulate business, not control business, not to follow Dandaneet. You see, not to follow Dandaneet. And there, our job is to be able to see what is it that we can do to liberate our entrepreneurs, unleash India's entrepreneurial talent, unleash India's scientists, India's inventors. That's how they need to think about themselves. And I think there we really need to invest very deeply to train our bureaucrats to understand what are markets, what is technology, what is innovation, and what gets in the way of innovation and what gets in the way of unleashing market forces. And there, the first and most important principle is that we have to get our market ecosystems to work well. They have to be well regulated. They have to be well. If you unleash market forces, you will see incredible results. And I'll close with the story of Udaan. So when I came to the Ministry of Civil Aviation, at that time we had a fantastic secretary who was at the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Dr. R.N. Chaubey, who said, Jayanji, you really need to see what we have done in Udaan. So I said, terrific, that's wonderful. Let me see what has been done for Udaan. And then we sat down, and Deloitte was actually doing the work on Udaan, and they had developed a massive 200, 300 how Udaan was actually going to work and how the subsidies were going to work and how they wanted to work with the airlines to enable Udaan to happen. And we spent 4 hours going through that very, very complicated book of exactly how this would be regulated, these policies would be in place, these rules would be there, this is what airlines could do, this is what airlines couldn't do, and on for 4 hours. So I listened to Deloitte as they went through all of this, and having been a consultant myself, I could understand what they were trying to do. At the end of the 4 hours, I asked Deloitte, I said, you laid out all of the rules and regulations as to how Udaan will work. I said, is anyone going to make money on this? So I asked the Deloitte partner, I said, is anyone going to make money on this? He says, well, we haven't analyzed that. And the point is that you can create a program, you can create a set of policies which are, hundreds of pages. But at the end of the day, if people who are in the markets are not going to make money, if they are not going to generate profits, why is anyone going to invest? Why is anyone going to buy a plane and put a plane on a route from Delhi to Bikaner if they can't make money? That first principle you have to follow. To unleash market forces, people have to make money, people have to generate returns. And obviously in a well-regulated markets, those returns are competitive returns. Those returns are commensurate with the risk that people are taking. And in a well-regulated, well-functioning markets, there are sufficient competitive forces to keep these in check. But we have to first and foremost think about the market. We have to think first and foremost about players in the market and ask ourselves, have the right incentives been created for investment? Have the right incentives been created for people to risk entrepreneurial energy and their entrepreneurial talent in these markets or not? And so literally, just to conclude, we sat down and we built the spreadsheets for airlines to see whether they could make money and whether they could generate adequate returns to invest in Udaan. And of course, we had to tweak some of the policies to do that. But I'm very pleased to say, as a result of the policy and market forces in Udaan, as Saurabh was saying, not only did we add 35 airports in 3 years, both Indigo and SpiceJet placed orders for 50 ATRs, turboprops, which is a completely different type of plane. Instead of doing the narrow body jets, which is what both Indigo and SpiceJet were doing, you'll see when you go on an Udaan route, very often those routes are turboprops. And those turboprops are ideally equipped to do the short hop Udan flights. But it's a different type of plane that's required for that kind of market. And that's the kind of market we created that led to billions of dollars of investments coming into these short hop Udan routes. And that was because we unleashed market forces. We made it attractive for market participants to develop these market ecosystems, to create these kinds of routes, put in sufficient investment and enable connections like Delhi-Bikaner, Delhi-Ludhiana, Coimbatore to Chennai, all of these different types functionaries need to do is to always ask themselves, am I unleashing market forces? Am I making it possible for entrepreneurs to get funded? Am I making it possible for capital to flow into all of these new areas? Because if that is the case, then yes, indeed, we will solve India's problems. We will solve Jhanda Chowk's problems, and Bhola Mehto and Geeta Oraon will get great jobs, and we will march towards Atmanirbharta. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha. It was a very enlightening speech for all of us, and we, as the keepers of the system and the entrepreneurs present amongst us, we all took note, and we will go back to the drawing board and make sure that we are doing it the right way. With this online platform, while it makes it easier for us to connect and get time from important people like you and Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Srivastav and Dr. Renu Swarup, the one disadvantage it has is that it does not really allow us to light up the lamp, the auspicious lamp. So with that, I would request you to kindly formally throw this conclave open for all and inaugurate it.
I'm very, very pleased to inaugurate this wonderful conclave, and my best wishes to all the participants.
Thank you. So, Manish, now that the conclave is thrown open, I would request you to quickly give statistics of what we have been able to achieve in terms of getting entrepreneurs and stalls and etc. And then we move on to the vote of thanks so that we do not impose too much on the time of our dignitaries. And I will request all the dignitaries to, if possible, take little time and visit the stalls afterwards. Manish, over to you.
Thank you, Jayant Sinha ji, Dr. Mashelkar, Dr. Srivastav, and Dr. Swarup. I think this congregation of 550 plus big entrepreneurs is backed up with the mentors, investors, stakeholders, incubation centers, and that's a large community of biotech innovation ecosystem, and it is growing. A representative sample has been also reflected in the exhibition, and while this conference you have opened it up, exhibition now also opens up with your blessings, and some of these startups have put up their stalls also. So I think the next 2 days are exciting and would bring in a lot of enablers, as you said, Jayant Sinha ji, enablers to facilitate the last mile delivery, make technologies accessible not as regulators but as market facilitators. So you will see all the people who have come together, they have the passion and the right spirit to deliver and make things happen. Thank you so much. Maybe over to Nikhil now. Thank you.
Amitabh, you are unmuted, so you are saying something.
Oh, yeah. I request you to please offer the vote of thanks.
I would say, what a morning. The year started with a gloom, fear, and uncertainty. But I can say this year can be dedicated to innovators, health workers, medtech companies, and scientists. I am personally re-energized and ready to go after hearing you all, sir. Big shout to our StarCast entrepreneurs. Without your presence, we would have not been here today. Big thanks to Honorable MP Jayant Sinha ji, one of our brilliant voices of Indian polity, has given us the next paradigm of innovation, farm to green frontiers. Dr. Mashelkar, big thanks to you, sir. the true inspiration of scientific community. He said not only we need to recover, but we need to reimagine ourselves. Big thanks to Dr. Srivastava, the father of our Indian VC community, and our mentor, our guide at IIT Kanpur, who has been forefront of innovation. I must tell you, sir, during the NOCA time, and Dr. Mashelka was mentioning, Dr. Srivastava personally has dedicated 3 to 4 hours per day for almost 90 days, without fail, 7 days a week. And I'm not exaggerating, continuously, and he has dedicated that time for make sure that NOCA and these kind of innovators works. So big thanks to you, sir. Dr. Renu Swarup, our leader in bio community, who has given us a task to pole vault to the next level. Dr. Manish Diwan, the big game changer. With Manish ji around, we always feel confident and something new is going to happen. And my friend and colleague, Dr. Bandyopadhyay, he is the passionate scientist and torchbearer of IIT Kanpur innovation ecosystem. The excellence has no limits. Our best is yet to come. That's what Dr. Mashelkar has said. It's time that we should transform to the next level, and it's time for self-reliant, it's time for Atmanirbhar Bharat. At the Jayant Sinha ji has said, competitive resilience and sustainable CSR Bharat. Thanks again for coming today. I look forward for a great session and a conference ahead. Thanks a lot.
Sir, with a small request to all my dignitaries, all the stakeholders that have made effort to put this ecosystem together, I would request for a joint picture with in the presence of Jayant Sinha ji, Dr. Mashelkar, and Dr. Saurabh, please. We have big partners and the core team who's the strength behind it. May I request everybody to come online and we can have a joint picture. Dipanvita, Poini, yes, I think a couple of people are missing. Shilpi, Aditi,
and also Dr. Swarup if she's around.
Yes, I have prompted her, but it seems she is in another meeting and unable to join. We will bring her.
Sir, Aditi is on Zoom.
All right. We will bring her picture in the collage. Sure.
Yeah, I would be able to bring.
Taranjit, if you please make yourself apparent. Yeah, hi Taranjit.
Don't see Aditi.
Sir, Aditi is on Zoom. She's visible on my screen. So if I click a picture here, she would be there in the frame.
Fantastic.
Aditi, I request you to click on the camera.
Let us know.